Did you know you can go see a dead saint in Philadelphia? Like, laid out in a glass case. Yeah, I went up there in September of 2025 to check it out, not just because it's a dead body, but also because it's the body of probably my favorite dead Catholic that I'm not related to, the Bishop of Philadelphia, St. John Neumann. And going back through the pictures for this video, it looks like I might have gotten some ghost photography or something. So we're going to take a look at that, as well as an ex ossibus, or from the bones relic, some statues, architecture, mosaic art, and a whole lot of weird mannequins in the basement. Stick around. So, our guy, John Neumann, was the first male U.S. citizen to be canonized by the Catholic Church. And I say the first male because the first U.S. citizen to be canonized overall was actually a female. That was St. Frances Xavier Cabrini, also known as Mother Cabrini. But the canonization of John Neumann took place in 1977, and he was canonized by Pope Paul VI. Anyway, Neumann was born March 28th, 1811, so he was an Aries. He was born in the Kingdom of Bohemia, played guitar, studied philosophy and the natural sciences, as well as mathematics and some other things as a teenager. He went to seminary school, but got snubbed for a priesthood in 1835. So he decided to say, fuck it, and go to America to be a missionary. And this made his parents extremely, extremely upset. But then all his funding fell through, and the church in Philadelphia, where he aimed to go, said that they didn't need him. So it looked like it was not going to happen, and his family could stop being upset. But then again, he said, fuck it, and he went on his own. Gotta respect that. And this time, he didn't tell anybody except for his sister, Veronica, who I guess held it together the first time. John Neumann traveled super light and arrived in New York in May of 1836. He was ordained at St. Patrick's there in New York about a month later because they needed German-speaking priests, basically. He moved around from there to the area around Buffalo and Niagara, Pittsburgh, and eventually was appointed the fourth bishop of Philadelphia by Pope Pius IX. John Neumann was known for being very dutiful and also shunning material wealth, which I think is pretty cool. He apparently had only one pair of boots at a time through his entire span in America. But also, whenever he would get gifted new vestments, that's like the holy clothing or whatever that they wear, he would just give them away to whoever the newest priest was, because he understood that the newest priest was like just starting out and didn't have these things. So he was helping out a newbie, as it should be. One kind of funny detail about St. John Neumann is that he was a little guy. He was only 5'2" and a half inches tall, so he had to get around on a horse, but he couldn't reach the stirrups. So he was constantly being thrown off of his horse, and like many, many times, to the point where he developed a reputation as someone who was thrown off of his horse. But he did figure it out by leading the horse instead of riding it until they came to like an understanding or whatever. And I think that's cool. He basically submitted to his beast in a way until they could work it out. Neumann died January 5th, 1860, from a heart attack in public while running errands. That's only 48 years old when he died, so pretty young. And as we already noted, his body is right here in plain view under a glass case at the shrine that bears his namesake. And yes, that is a death mask over his skull. As with all saints in the making of his day, Neumann had 2 miracles attributed to him for beatification and one for canonization. All 3 of them revolve around the idea of spontaneous recovery after someone prayed to Bishop Neumann. The first was in 1923, where an 11-year-old Italian girl named Eva Benassi recovered from acute diffused peritonitis. I guess that's an abdomen thing. Then in 1949, when a 19-year-old Pennsylvania dude named Kent Lenahan Jr. recovered from a car crash. Okay. And then in 1963, when a 6-year-old Philly kid named Michael Flanagan recovered from bone cancer. And so John Neumann is known not just as the saint of immigrants, but also sick children. And he's known as the saint of educators too, because he started the first Catholic school system and massively expanded the number of schools in Pennsylvania. Well, Catholic schools. But I want to talk about the sick kids part, because that's how I came to be acquainted with Neumann. Like old Michael Flanagan, I also had bone cancer and also was just about done in from it as a kid. And at some point during that period, I was given this medal by a friend of my mother's named Lauren. And it was explained to me that, this was the saint of sick kids, and I could hold this medal and pray to him. Notably, Lauren also introduced me to recycling and, to some degree, astrology. She's an Aquarius like myself. So I gotta say, I've never been overtly religious because I don't really know what I'm feeling ever, and I can't really trust feelings, but I did go through some very extreme suffering and medical trauma at age 13 and 14, roundabout. So I did keep St. John Neumann in my mind a lot. And I did eventually recover. And I did find power in this little ornament, which I still have today, obviously. And in fact, I decided to bring it with me to his shrine, just to see. The shrine of St. John Neumann is located in a lower building of St. Peter the Apostle Church in Philadelphia. Walking by the fence, you see this marble statue where he looks a little annoyed by these kids. But wouldn't you rather see a Catholic priest annoyed by kids rather than, into them? But also notice he's kind of doing the as above, so below thing with his hands, and is also like holding a rock or something. I have no idea what this is, and I can't find any info on it. But also, it kind of looks like these kids want him to throw the rock or whatever it is to them or something. I don't know. Also, is that guy really 5'2.5"? Looks a little tall. So inside is this lobby area. There's a really nice, helpful staff. It's very clean and clinical inside. There's a little fountain and a skylight and some statues. And you can check out a little piece of John Neumann's skeleton here before the main event downstairs. For over in the corner is the first class or ex ossibus Catholic relic. Again, ex ossibus is Latin for from the bones. And this is indeed a little piece of bone from the body of John Neumann. Kind of weird, really. Especially since the whole body is downstairs. Like, did they chip this piece off? Or get it from his doctor? Or like drop him and a piece came off? Like, oh, better scoop that up. I don't know, kind of weird. Also, that's some very fancy packaging, too. Next to the relic are these little prayer cards, which they go kind of hard, really. It may just be standard Catholic language, but they don't say my prayers, they say my petitions. Like, yo, God, I filled out this paperwork, you're being served. And then at the bottom, it says, through the intercession of St. John Neumann. So dude is just taken that responsibility on like he's the fucking man. Give me your paperwork. I'm going to file it with God. We'll get this done, all right? So I wrote my petitions and then dropped them in the glass petition box. And mine somehow got stuck right here, held up against the glass by another one. Slid right between them. Okay. So I went downstairs to the shrine. You got to pass by this quote with too many capital letters. May the thought of thee never be absent from me. Okie dokie. When you walk down the stairs, the shrine is right around the corner. But when I walked in, there was a guy wearing an Eagles jersey praying in the pew. And I didn't want to just walk up in there and start taking pictures and wrecking his moment like an asshole. So I sat down in a pew on the other side and very quietly pulled out my medal. And I had the medal in a plastic bag so it wouldn't get lost when I'm carrying it around. Removing it seemed excruciatingly loud to me in that quiet room of prayer. And I wondered if the Eagles jersey guy thought I was like eating shrooms or something since I'm like pulling things out of a little bag. Anyway, I held my medal in my hand, and since I was states away from home, I was pretty worry-free and couldn't really think of anything to pray about. So I just meditated, basically, and that opened up my soul to whatever was in the room. And I think I made contact. It was brief, but it seemed to come from outside myself, and I interpreted it as the voice of John Neumann. And it said this to me: we retreat from one and return to the other. And that's something that has stuck with me, and I thought a lot about on the trip and still think about often. My interpretation of this one and other in question was some kind of esoteric body, maybe God or maybe a collective soul. But this, just like the seemingly as above, so below reference on the statue, really had a hermetic or theosophical vibe to it. Theosophical. We retreat from one and return to the other. Was the voice of John Neumann in my head talking about Pralaya and Manvantara? Was it referencing the opposite realms of the physical world and the spiritual? If we return to one, that means we have been there before. But which one is which? You can see this video about that. And if it's a retreat and a return at once, could it be that we are crossing a void in the middle of a larger body that otherwise surrounds us? It seemed a bit beyond any concept of eternal suffering or reward, which is nice if it was a legit saint spirit coming through and telling me this. Also, that concept in the message kind of harkens back to something else we discussed in the last video, and that's the idea conveyed in The Animate and the Inanimate by William James Sidis that two bodies moving in opposite states between equilibrium and difference will appear motionless or dead to one another across the divide. I'm not going to get into all that here. You can just watch that other video. But again, we are dealing with two stations and the movements between them rather than an idea of terminal stillness. So, once that message was received, that is, we retreat from one and return to the other, the Eagles jersey guy was still sitting there. And I was back in the physical plane waiting for him to leave so I could take some pictures. Some people. But then another guy came in and sat down. But this actually kind of loosened up the vibe. I think it's a little easier going to annoy multiple people at once instead of just one person. It switches the context from two opposing elements to an outlier from the majority. So two people can roll their eyes at the third in solidarity instead of one person feeling the shadow of the other. With only two people, I might be a soul disruptor, but when there are three of us, I'm a clown at the worst. So when the second guy came in, that was my cue to cheapen the whole thing with photography. Slowly, though, as if it's for some scholarly pursuit. Which, I don't know, maybe it is. I started at this extremely ornate mosaic here, that pose and that black and red vestment, again, give me some real occult type vibes. Neumann's got Jesus in his below hand, which again kind of offsets the idea that the spirit world is eternal penalty and reward. Like if Jesus is below, then that's where we must be now, and up is the only alternative, right? Cool, dude. And look at the little mini scenes here around him. At first, I thought they told a story, like here's Elvis Presley getting off a boat with some people, and I guess that lady has a baby, but she's probably not Priscilla because no way that's Lisa Marie. And I figured that's not Lisa Marie because in the next image, the baby has grown into a sick little kid in the hospital. And then I guess the kid didn't make it because it seemed everyone was going to the funeral in the third image. But in hindsight, I think I was wrong. I think the images are not related. It's actually just showing each of John Neumann's domains: immigrants, sick kids, and education. So that's not a church, it's a Catholic school. And these nuns here probably hit the kids with rollers on their wrists. And I also think this is not actually Elvis, but just an immigrant who was an Elvis impersonator. Anyway, so if you haven't noticed, John Neumann's body is under this glass at the front of the room, but I was saving it for last because of the two dudes in there, so I photographed all the elegant arches behind the body first. Out of context, it has a very eyes wide shut kind of vibe. Of course, maybe in context too. And I wanted to get a direct on of John Neumann's death mask. I did walk up and look directly down on it, but it felt way off to take a photo like that with those other dudes in there watching and praying and stuff. So best I got are several pictures of this side view. But this is the ghost photo part, because as per my usual practices, I took a bunch of photos in a row. And look at this. 3 of them have this strange red bloody spots or whatever on them. And of those, the angle between the last 2 is far too negligible for such a big change. And maybe it's just an issue with the camera, I don't know, but I only noticed it after the fact, and I didn't see anything around the body that could be projecting that color on him like that. But maybe because he's the saint of sick kids, he is like a candy striper or an ambulance. Woo 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 woo. And here's a zoom in of his head since I didn't get a top down photo. He's pretty covered up by the death mask and the vestments, but there's a skeleton in those clothes. Also, those clothes have changed a few times too, as late as December 2007. So like a couple days after Christmas, someone was up in there playing dress up with a skeleton. So I don't know, that's pretty cool. After I got the pictures, I left the 2 dudes sitting in there to check out all the mannequins in the surrounding area. They're all kind of chill. You got these 4 friends hanging out, standing on the furniture. From left to right, there's this nerd, Francis X. Silos, with his map and cross, looking like a douchebag. Then this one, St. Pedro Calungsod, who was born in 1654, but looks like this girl who works at the Pilot Light music venue here in Knoxville. He's the saint of Filipino kids, altar boys, and overseas Filipino workers. He was martyred at age 17 in Guam because he was helping to colonize the shit out of the indigenous Chamorro people. Beside Pedro is this dude who you certainly recognize if you grew up in the 1980s, Pope John Paul II. I like how he's all like, "Hey, what's up?" And rounding it out here is Saint Lorenzo Ruiz, the patron saint of the Philippines and Filipino people generally. He was also martyred. In his case, he was tortured by the Japanese government in Nagasaki through a technique called shurushi, where they hung him upside down over a hole of poop and cut his forehead to bleed him out over days. He never recanted the entire time, and he died after 2 days in that position. I don't know if that's admirable or kind of stupid or what, but I'd hate to be that guy. So, okay, off by himself in the other side of the area is Saint Gerard Majella. That's the saint of basically children and mothers, falsely accused people, and a few other things too. This is, I guess, because when he was 27, spilling the tea on St. Gerard Majella. When he was 27, a pregnant lady said he was the baby daddy. And he basically accepted the blame to supposedly protect the actual father. Oh, yeah, okay, sure. The lady did actually eventually retract the accusation a few years later, but he was already dead by then. He died of tuberculosis at age 29. Play on, playa. He also looks like a Pilot Light employee, one of the door guys. Also in that area of the shrine is this angel lady putting her fingers in your face. And this totally chill Jesus who really seems to be saying, that's just your opinion, man. There's also this shrugging angel in the stained glass as well. Everyone's just like, hey, what are you going to do? I did also go to the main church area, but it was being cleaned and they had the glass door locked. Whatever. So yeah, that's the shrine of St. John Neumann. If you're in Philadelphia, it's free to visit, so you may as well. He seemed like an all right dude. Here's the ghost footage or whatever again. Is that an ambulance? Is that how an ambulance goes? I don't remember. All right, well, we retreat from one and we return to the other. Got it. Thanks, John Neumann, for everything. Now, won't you like and subscribe? Come on.